Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Megan.
Hey, Rosie.
Oh, hey, girl.
Hey. Today we have our resident anxiety expert on, who's also just a best friend of the podcast, here for a special episode.
Yay.
So welcome.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for having me. I'll be over here.
Sarah, what's up with you this week?
Not much. Well, I am really excited because this is actually perfect because we've got Rosie, your other best friend, on today, and I am busy planning a wine trip for Megan to meet my other best friends.
Woohoo! I'm excited.
So we're planning it for next month. I have a group of best friends that I've been friends with for almost 20 years. We were really young when we all met. And of course, they've heard all about Megan and Megan's heard all about them. But I'm planning the wine day, which, Rosie, I know you are in Texas, but we're going to have to get you out here for one of these too.
Yeah, that would be so
I drink
fun.
wine.
But
we should send her the dates.
Yes.
That would be fun.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Maybe you can come to this one. The funniest thing about it though is this is something my girlfriends and I have done a few times, and I sent Megan a few dates and a few options, and I was like, oh, and by the way, here's the video of us on the party bus last year when we did this. And it's just a bunch of moms getting wild on a party bus. And Megan said, oh my goodness, I didn't know you could stand up on a party bus. I've never been on one.
I haven't. I've never ridden on one. I feel like I'm missing out.
It made me extra excited. You are missing out, but next month you're going to come. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited. That's going to be so much fun.
I'm excited too. What's going on with you this week?
Oh, well, so it's summertime here, and the kids are out of school, which means Mama's looking for camps. And I found a camp that I sent my kids to this past week. And I have to say, I have something to run by both of you. So usually like my check-ins are funny or something cute that's happened or like a product review. This is like totally different. So buckle up. I was doing a drop off for camp, and my youngest is too young to go. So when I drop her off, I let her go play on the playground for a little bit first. This security guard I've sort of been getting to know because he's just there every day, and like I really appreciate the extra security. Like I think it's a great thing. But he came up and we had like our pleasant hellos, like the normal sort of banter we have, like just hi, how are you doing today? Things like that. And then he stood there and started talking to me. So I just, engaged as I was watching my daughter play. And he started saying some things to me that were like overtly sexual. And I
Not on the playground.
I know. And at a kids camp. And I was sort of caught off guard. And I haven't worked in prisons for like 10 years, right? So like my prison Megan is gone. Like I'm just like soft mom Megan now. And I wish prison Megan would have been ready because
you didn't tell him to get to the side.
I wasn't screaming at him to get out of the way, get to the side, like I did in the prisons I worked at. I didn't know what to do. Like he was like clearly like crossing boundaries, right? And the best I could come up with was like, oh, we're going to go now to go buy my husband some Father's Day presents. And he yelled out, well, get him some alcohol. And I was like, oh my gosh, like just like left flabbergasted and sort of like angry at myself now for like not standing up for myself.
What did he say?
He identified himself as horny.
Oh.
I know. And I was like, there's a lot more storytelling that goes along with, like, I don't want to, like, identify this person in any way, shape, or form, but, like, lots of, like, racy stories that he was telling me. And I was, like, out of the blue, you know, and I was just, like, a little shocked. And it was, like, at kids camp. So I left and I was just like, at the time I was just pleasant and I was like, oh, okay, thanks for that recommendation. I'm going to be I'm going to go now.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, exactly. But left feeling like self-respect was left at the door. I feel like I left it back there. I feel like I didn't respect myself by saying in the moment, that's inappropriate, And there was something holding me back from standing up for myself, but I couldn't identify it. So resident anxiety expert Rosie, what's up?
Oh, well, I mean, deep in there with the resident anxiety expert is this raging feminist wanting to call the public space back for us. So we have to have an absolution here today, Sarah. We have to say to Megan, this guy's whole thing is to catch people off guard and watch your home training make you be polite about it. And then go home and take responsibility for it. And there was not a person who did something wrong in the situation except for your friend, the mall cop
Mr.
there,
Security.
Right? Yeah. Megan did not do anything wrong. Let's get that straight. Right. And that's his MO, right? Catching people off guard, knowing they're too polite, knowing they're certainly not going to make a scene with their kids around. And then, saying
he gets off on just wanting to get a rise out of people.
He's definitely learned that he can do it, that you're in a vulnerable position when you and that you don't expect it. And there are certain, most of us are polite when we're caught off guard. Right. And so he's just sort of, trading on that societal reality. So we're going to just do a big old absolution, Megan. The single worst outcome from this, and we can get tactical about it. We can get logistical, on the subject in a moment, but we certainly are not going to take responsibility for this man's bad behavior, not on this night drinking our rosé, no ma'am.
Yeah. I love that, Rosie.
No,
yes.
I don't accept that. We're not holding that for him. His mama better hold it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I just felt and I came home and the first thing I did was call my mama. I was like, Mom, this is what just happened to me. She's like, hang up this phone and call the school, call the camp. And I was like, okay, yep, all right. I mean, psychology Megan would be like, okay, of course, go report this. But it happened to me, and I'm just like, what do? I call my mom about it. Some things are so ingrained. And so I called the school and then came home and talked to my husband about it. And he's like, you can say more in the moment. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I could have. I just, something was holding me back from doing that. But I struggled with it. I wasn't sure, looking back on it, there's so much I could have said and I didn't say. And I hate that feeling.
Yes.
Yeah, but you called the school. That's amazing.
That's great. Could your daughter hear? Was she standing with you or were you holding her?
No, she was off. I was by myself. She was in the gates playing on the play structure. So she wasn't with me, but he was also cursing. And I was just I actually don't care if people curse, but I don't appreciate it in front of my kids. I'm always just be careful, don't say things. And especially if a ton of kids are around, which a ton of kids are at this camp. It just seems like more boundary crossing, and yeah.
It is so gross and inappropriate. And I cannot stand having interactions like that. But things like that have happened to me as well. And I think the way that I responded before I was a mom was very aggressive. The feminist in me came out and I would be very aggressive and very mean. And now as a mom, it's that behavior and that response, it doesn't come out because we're being examples and we're trying to be calm and collected for our child to feel safe. So it is so confusing.
Well, I'd also add that, when come on back over, I say this all the time, everything relates to anxiety. And we have a fight, flight response, it's actually a fight, flight, freeze response.
Right.
And it's for a reason, right? So if you survive, we would say to survivors, if you survive a situation, then no one can judge how you acted in that situation, right? Because your brain said, I'm not sure what to do with this. And so it bought itself some time to be strategic. And then you did something way more effective than sassing that. I mean, that man's been cussed out multiple times in his life.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
That's what I wish I would have done.
If you called his mama would have been like, I cussed him out 50 years ago. He's still acting that way. Again, still. Rufus is still out there. Your mom, that that's not necessarily, so you should pat yourself on the back for having how you handled it, and then still having the courage to do something about it that actually matters and protects other, parents and potentially other kids from this just like creepiness, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks guys. Thanks for letting me like process and vent. Cause I was like, I've been thinking about it a lot and it just like sticks with you for a little bit, but you're right. I survived it. I just got myself out of there. That was my goal.
And hopefully that school will get him out of there so you won't ever see him again.
Yeah, right. And get him out of the school system altogether. So it'd be great.
We're going to call that retreating and reloading.
I love that.
I like that.
Yes,
Indeed, I'm reloading.
Let me go get my big weapon. I'll be back. I'm going to call this school. Yeah, you feel fine over there. You're doing great.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, welcome everyone to Platinum Perspective, the podcast about beauty, travel, luxury, and more. I'm your co-host, Sarah.
And I'm Megan. Sarah and I are best friends who put the work in to get the most out of life so you don't have to. Now, audience, nothing makes me cooler in the summer heat than Rosé with Rosie, our resident expert in anxiety and best friend of the Platinum Perspective on staying cool. We have a very special episode scheduled for you today, and we are going to be talking about celebrities.
Woo! Yay! I am like overly excited. Maybe we'll have to address like at a separate time why I'm so interested in celebrities. Like that might be an underlying issue. But I am overly excited. So we touched on celebrities when we chatted with Rosie before, just briefly. And then I gave Megan the homework to watch the Anna Nicole Smith documentary that Rosie and I have both watched because I just loved her when I was in college and watching her show. And she was just so much bigger than life, just like an amazing personality. But now as an adult looking back, obviously there were a lot of issues. And with this new documentary that came out, there was a lot of parallels to Marilyn Monroe. So it's just really interesting. And I wanted to get some psychologist's viewpoint on what was really going on there. So Megan, did you watch the documentary?
I did. Yeah, I watched it. And yeah, like parts of it struck home for me too. Like I totally forgot the Guess ad campaign until I saw those images, and it brought it back for me a lot. Like I was like, oh gosh, I do remember her. Like I never watched any of her shows, but I do remember her image and thinking like, wow, is she ever just like gorgeous and has probably the perfect life, and wish I could look like that, like the same feelings maybe probably lots of women had about her. She was just beautiful and like you said, larger than life. Yeah, it was super interesting to watch about that. And it was also very interesting to see her draw parallels between herself and Marilyn Monroe, which I, before like researching her, didn't realize there actually are a lot of parallels between the two of them. They sort of lived similar lives in different time spans, but yeah, like it was very interesting. I saw a lot there. I want to leave room for Rosie to hop in whenever, but it's interesting the way they both died the same way too.
Yeah. And so for our audience, maybe who haven't watched this documentary or know much about it, let me speak to some of those parallels. So Marilyn Monroe, she died when she was only 36. And it said that she died of a overdose from a type of medicine. But she had a troubled childhood, and there was a lot of changing in homes. She was in orphanages and foster cares. There was a lot of sexual abuse. And then she was kind of pushed into this world of being a model and an actress during a time when women weren't respected in that art. And, she was really pushed around by the studios and made to do things that weren't necessarily probably things that she wanted to do. And also she was pushed kind of into having this public persona that wasn't her. right? Like she was pushed into this dumb blonde public persona. And there's a lot of data and writings from Marilyn Monroe that she was really brilliant. She was talented. She has detailed journals that have been released. Like she wasn't this dumb blonde, but she was pushed into that persona, and that's how the world knew her. So similarly with Anna Nicole Smith, you know, she comes along. So Marilyn Monroe passed away in the 60s, and then Anna Nicole comes along in the 90s. And it's interesting because the world believed she came from a troubled childhood. Now, watching this new documentary, it actually came out that her mom spoke out in an interview with her, and we had shared this before, but her mom believed she didn't come from a troubled childhood. She came from a middle class, maybe lower middle class, but she lived with her mom and she had a family, and there weren't signs of abuse. But obviously there were some other issues, but she came up in the 90s just because she was really tall and really beautiful. And she just started modeling, and she got into that Playboy world, and that pushed her into high-end modeling with Guess, and then TV and movies. And then ultimately she had her own reality show, which unfortunately was towards the end of her life. But it's interesting in the documentary, she put in some parallels with herself and Marilyn Monroe, like having this troubled childhood, which maybe wasn't necessarily true. She even said that she believed she was possibly Marilyn Monroe's reincarnated daughter. Marilyn Monroe never gave birth to a child, but Anna Nicole believed that maybe a miscarriage that Marilyn Monroe had, she was the reincarnated daughter. So there's some loopy stuff going on. But Anna Nicole then did pass away at 39. So very young, two women that were really in the public eye, maybe in a way that wasn't authentic to who they truly were.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's sort of listening to you draw those parallels, but also the differences, right? Because Marilyn Monroe seems a lot more authentic to me because, and like, it seems like what we saw from Marilyn Monroe. One thing I love, this is a total side note, I love genetics. And like what I would see from Marilyn Monroe is like her environment was evocative. It's sort of what you call that. Like it pulls for certain things from certain people at different times. And you can see that like she was this larger than life person, beautiful, but she went through a lot of hardship and all that. And then she came out to be this huge celebrity, but her environment sort of pulled for that. She had the genes, the environment pulled this out of her. I see Anna Nicole a bit different. I see her as like more provocative. Like you would say, like her genes were probably pushing some of this forward rather than the environment pulling it from her, because she's making up stories about her past that aren't true, and that's not as necessarily like authentic as Marilyn Monroe. I don't know, just like off the cuff, that's sort of what I'm thinking about.
Megan's a better psychologist than I am. Hi, this is Rosie. You're a better psychologist because you're always drawn towards the individual difference sort of conversation. And I'm really, for these two women, I'm really drawn to sort of the like, what does it say about our society conversation, that like ultimately they're mirrors, and they're not that like, maybe they're not that interesting as individual people, but the fact that they sort of represent how we all see beauty as something that we use for, you know, financial gain, right? Like here's this really beautiful teenager.
Yes.
Right? Because they both started as teenagers. What do we do with beautiful teenagers in our society? We sort of think about how to use their beauty before it runs out, especially with women. And so when like the scary thing is, and Sarah, I just had chills because I knew we were going to talk about this, but I didn't think about the parallel when you talk about when you have a public persona, and the further it gets away from who you really are, the more sort of like bad that can be for you. And when I think about just like there's a million people with more than 1 million followers on Instagram, right? And that gives me chills, like, oh my God, are we just mass producing people whose reality is not in touch with who have fake names? Like they both of them have fake names, right? And they have just different sort of lived experiences that are very different from their persona, whether it's their childhood wasn't actually that bad or it was really bad. I don't think I think the gap is sort of what's relevant. And I do sort of ultimately say, okay, what does that mean about who we are and like who we're going to be and how we raise our girls and all that stuff?
Yes, it's so concerning. And I guess what I'm wondering too is, like, from a psychologist point of view, were these women who were born, they won the genetic lottery, but were they also born with some type of personality disorder, or did the environment that they were put in because of their genetic lottery push them to have some personality issues? Obviously, there's personality issues there, right?
Sarah, can I go on the record and say something in response to
Yes.
what Megan said previously? Megan said something about how we know Marilyn. I just want to go on the record. I was born in 1982. I don't know nothing about, I never knew Marilyn.
No, yeah. I mean,
well,
I'm not her cohort. I don't know anything about her personally.
Well, okay. Well, let me, I start, when I was younger, I was born in 19, oh my gosh, I don't even want to say this out loud on the podcast.
I just said I'm almost 40 on the last podcast, so you do it, girl.
I was born around the same time as you, Rosie. But when I was a teenager, I was really, I really loved musicals, and my parents were like showing me lots of different musicals, and Marilyn Monroe stars in a lot of musicals. So I really fell in love with her. I mean, my favorite movie of all time is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and then like followed up by How to Marry a Millionaire. But I even love like The Misfits, which isn't a musical, but her movies are just amazing. And I fell in love with those. But what I've realized is, because she passed away so young, she was immortalized as this young, beautiful woman, right? The world never saw her get old. And so the story of her up until she was 39 is the story that we know. And then also her image is so striking that I've met a lot of people that say, oh, I love Marilyn Monroe, but they've never seen any of her movies. And that's
point.
shocking. That's surprising to me. Well, then you love what she looked like when she was 30.
Yeah.
But who is she really? And then Nicole had this obsession with her and duplicated some things into her own life, right? That came from Marilyn Monroe's life. It all just seems like a big mess.
She seems mixed up. I don't think she knows where center is, and there might be part of her that believes some of that stuff that she was saying at the time. Like sometimes that happens. I don't know if that's the case here because I don't obviously know Nicole. But sometimes reality does get mixed up with imaginary or something that you really, really care about. Like it can seep in and change your perception in ways where maybe at some point she did think some things had happened to her. And then, I mean, like there's the whole hypnosis thing, right? Like you can this is why Rosie and I will just say out loud, we don't believe in hypnosis. At least I don't, right, Rosie?
I believe in deep relaxation.
Deep relaxation. There you go. Like there is nothing that can be like uncovered from like
we don't
hypnosis,
believe in
like
recovered memories. Yeah.
No, we don't believe in recovered memories. It's not like this comes back later. Like it's not like a lot of times your imagination can take over in those states. So I don't, and then people have loose sort of like grasps on reality sometimes. Like it's great to some people, honestly. And that's just how it is for them. And that's the environment they're living in. That's sort of what they have to deal with. So I wonder what level of like ambiguity Anna Nicole Smith actually lived in her own reality. She may have questioned a lot of things. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have to say, Sarah, I definitely remember, and I know you all are both younger than me, but I remember watching the Anna Nicole reality show and enjoying it because there are people who are objectively entertaining. But I also remember, and sort of like now when I reflect on it, to me, it is that you can be entertaining and have a substance use problem. Right. And I watched the Whitney Houston documentary or TV shows, Being Bobby Brown, all these different shows. Oh, yes. I remember that episode where she goes to Israel and finding it really entertaining, but also holding in mind at the same time that I might just be watching someone in the throes of addiction. And what does it mean that I am enjoying watching that? Like, what is that? But yeah, I think both of them they were sort of canaries in the coal mine for these epidemics in society, right? Nobody uses barbiturates, which is, Marilyn Monroe overdosed on barbiturates. And then Anna Nicole had a whole bunch of stuff in her system, but they both had, an issue with uppers and downers. And these were prescribed by professionals. So they both could have come across this honestly and wanted a good night's sleep that night. Mm-hmm. Right. And so again, it's about us and how we regulate these medications and how we sort of, privilege celebrity, but the privilege is to harm yourself to get the most out of this finite resource, which is your beauty and your, honestly, talent's finite in a way. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all that to say that, oh gosh, I love reality TV. Just because some people are just entertaining to watch. I don't care. I would watch Nene Leakes do anything.
I love her too. Oh my gosh.
But it'd be hard if I thought she were addicted to drugs. Like, it would be really hard to watch her. And I remember thinking that about Anna Nicole. Like, gosh, why am I watching this? And also, when is it coming on again?
Same. And I think we were so young when that show was on that it was hard to draw that connection. She just seemed really entertaining. But now looking back, it's like, oh gosh, it was so sad. And so I wonder, were there personality issues there? Was there mental health issues? Or did it appear to just be substance abuse?
It's honestly so hard to parse that apart without personal interaction with her, or like being able, like, one thing, like when you get your degree in in clinical psychology, like you have like whole classes and semesters worth of teaching about like how to parse apart different disorders and how to tell which symptoms go under which, and then you have to have like a prolific mentor like Thomas Joyner, like this guy that mentored Rosie and I, that's like tells you about
Thomas Joyner.
Shout out to Thomas Joyner about like the umbrella of like what captures the most, like what disorder captures the most of those symptoms that you're seeing, and like what's the overarching picture, and then how do these specific symptoms fit in. And it takes a lot of time to do something like that, even with just like one assessment. But with that in mind, like things that come to mind for her and for other reality stars for that matter are just like personality dimensions. Like one thing I noticed about her, like from the recordings I saw, is that she liked attention. And that's very common in celebrities, right? Like they really like attention, and that symptom falls into multiple different disorders. So I just jotted down like some symptoms that fall under some specific disorders that I suspect reality shows sort of look for. And one of those symptoms, one of those disorders it's called histrionic personality disorder. And it includes things like being uncomfortable when you're not the center of attention, seductive and provocative behavior, and shifting and shallow emotions. Like often when I would be assessing people, we had like a personality disorder lab that I worked in. And so we would try to pull people in that even have just like a little bit of this, just to see what it looked like and see how you reacted to stress and stuff like that. You would be looking
so interesting.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And because all personality is dimensional. Like we all have a certain level of it. It's not there or not there. It's so dimensional. We all have a little bit of it. So you can pull for higher levels of this and higher levels of that, and then see how these people respond in the lab. But one thing we'd look for is like the shallow emotions. And like, I remember, just seeing people and thinking to myself, I don't know if they're feeling this or not. If you have that question, it sort of fits into this a little bit. Using appearance to draw attention is another symptom of histrionic. Impressionistic and vague speech. So like saying things that don't actually mean anything. If that makes any sense.
Like what?
Like every reel on Instagram.
Like,
yeah. Like every reel on Instagram.
Like everything on TikTok. I don't know.
Yeah. dramatic and exaggerated emotions, being very suggestible. So this gets into that question of like, did somebody put these ideas in her head that these things happened to her? I don't know. But like, I question whether she maybe believed this at some point. So being easily influenced by others, and then considering relationships more intimate than they are. Often these people become your best friend right away. And like that's something that's like super interesting.
We became best friends pretty quick.
I know. Maybe one of us is histrionic, or both. Yeah, like the thing is, I don't make best friends easy, so you can know that about me. I've got you and Rosie, so I don't have like a ton. But yeah, so those are the symptoms of histrionic. And when I look at all kinds of reality shows, be it, I know you've mentioned multiple times, like Vanderpump Rules and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like,
what does Tom Sandoval have?
I know, right?
Come on, Tom just being Sandoval. A big asshole.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times they pull for these people who that are high on some of these dimensions that I just mentioned. Maybe they don't have meet criteria, but like they're going to be high on some of these dimensions because that's interesting to watch. So, you know,
I just want to give a shout out to the best personality psychologist of our time, which is Andy Cohen.
Oh, yes.
Oh, right? He sees it all, right?
Well, yeah, but I think it's amazing so I think that there are people who are objectively sort of entertaining and fun to watch, and they walk right up to the sort of water's edge of personality stuff.
I agree.
And they have just like the right combination, like especially the inhibition that's fun to watch. And I think that often the substance induced inhibition gets confused with sort of the natural inhibition, but the people who go the distance on reality TV are the people who are hard. They actually like work pretty hard, I think, but they are just like characters, and they just can't help but be characters. And I'm not sure that they're all personality disordered. Sorry, I'm leaning back and messing with my microphone, but I'm not sure that they're all personality disordered. But they are fun to watch. And I don't know, I'm guilty. My husband says all the time, like, you're a psychologist. Why do you go and then watch trash on TV? Because some people are entertaining. And I, but once I realize that someone's suffering, it's really like I become sad about it, and I can't keep watching.
Agreed.
Yeah. It is so interesting because I love Real Housewives and all of them, all the franchises, and watching them, like my girlfriends and I will plan a trip, and then we'll joke on the trip. Like, can you imagine if it was a Real Housewives trip and we're all just like arguing and fighting and screaming and yelling at each other? Like, this is crazy, but we all still watch it, and it's so entertaining.
Well, that's another thing. So I feel like the biggest benefit to being a psychologist is knowing that, and maybe this is just the CBT in me, but knowing that you don't know anything about how much someone's suffering or what they're really like from the outside. Right. You just don't know. And it's like a protective, at least for me, it's like really cut down. I remember as a child having, an interest in like, celebrity, and wouldn't it be cool to be wealthy, and wouldn't it be cool to have all this stuff? And then once you realize that everybody's suffering all the time, it's like, let me just go back to being me. Yes. And so it's really nice to know that everybody's got their challenges, no matter what you think is great about their life.
That's so true. And that being happy is such a blessing. If you're happy most of the time in your life, you've won the jackpot. And teaching our children that the most important thing in life is how to know how to make yourself happy, or not the most, but one of the most important things to make yourself happy. It's not going to be these specific material things or fame or money, but like simple things that make you happy will make you a happy person long term.
Yeah. I do like to watch people's drama though.
Now, really though, what do we think Tom Sandoval has?
Okay, so I want to say about Vanderpump Rules, I didn't watch it at all until this whole thing popped off, and I had to like catch up.
I'm still catching up.
Same.
I'm unfortunately I'm not done yet, but yeah,
it's because it's hard to watch. There's not a lot of likable people.
Like, I don't know, but he's so energetic.
cheaters have a lot of energy.
They have to.
Like, who has time? Who has the time?
I know.
Oh my gosh.
He's got a lot going on.
You have to really want attention to do all that work.
Well, we keep asking about him, or I keep asking about him, but I think the real question is about Raquel, because she seems like a zombie in the eyes, and she did this to her best friend. Ariana was her best friend.
She seemed so sweet to begin with. Like the beginning of the season, I just was like, I mean, I'm starting from scratch, so I don't know anything about these people, but I was like, oh, I feel for her because she's the one that broke up with that other dude, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I felt bad for her because I was like, oh, he seems like he's like moving on. She's back here sort of like, wah. But yeah, then this all sort of, I mean, people sort of fall into bad things too when they're vulnerable. I wonder if that sort of might have been some of this, but
they fall into bad people's beds.
Anything to feel some value, right? Like,
I mean, I'm just glad, like, okay, so let me caveat this with, I grew up, my father's a criminal defense attorney.
Oh, let's do an episode on that.
Well, and that, you know, I think as a, like, unconditional positive regard is a Megan, we can hear you pouring your wine.
Excuse me. This is really the Rosie with Rosie
episode.
Rosie,
okay.
I'm drinking. I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to interrupt. I'm drinking Rosé right now. It's called Flowers Rosé.
I'll drink the unconditional positive regard. I'm drinking a Lavier Ferme.
Ooh.
Okay, now that's my house.
And healthy
wine.
Sarah has water.
Oh, Sarah. Oh, Sarah.
I'm not a big drinker.
No.
Okay,
I
speaking of
always
reality
try to
TV,
do better.
we're going to photo her off the island. You guys are like, you're a guest on this island. I'm like, I know.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
Dying, Rosie.
Unconditional positive regard. Even Raquel, I actually feel like they got they piled on at the reunion in a way that that was just a little bit too much. It reminded me of that Game of Thrones scene where the girl walked through town naked.
Yes.
She had to walk through flea bottom naked and everybody was yelling, shame, 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 shame. Like, we get it. This was the sketchiest behavior of all. And I watched it to watch Deceit. I was like, oh, how did they pretend all season they weren't hooking up? Let me watch it. And let me look for all the little clues and see if I can see the tells. Like, I think that's why anybody kind of watched it. And, you know, I think everyone should, all those folks have the right to make a decision. I don't want to be friends with her, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there is something to be said for making sure that you're not watching TV to decide that you're better than someone on the TV.
That's true.
Yeah. You're just watching it for funsies because people are entertaining like Nene Leakes. Sorry.
I mean, he's got some like egotistic sort of stuff too. So there could be some of that sort of playing into his persona. But something I question about this and Real Housewives is like how much of this is actually scripted. Because isn't it a lot of it?
None of it, Megan. None of it's
all real.
It is all real. Yeah. The Kardashian show, the Real Housewives. It is all 100%
Oh, the Kardashian
real.
show is for sure scripted. You can tell those girls are like just reading.
Yeah, people who hate each other go to Cancun to make up all the time.
Yeah, right. So I feel like we're analyzing like characters rather than real people, but
that's true. Or how much of it is there's just a small amount that's real and the producers are pulling that and making it bigger. So it's still real, but they made it bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they set up scenarios, but I truly believe that like, I don't care if it's 90% scripted. There is nothing a producer can do to make someone as entertaining as some people are. Well, yeah, sleep with your best friend. But also make people as entertaining. I actually think, Raquel and Tom Sandoval are, you know, objectively, he's odd. I don't know how entertaining they are, but like when Teresa Giudice flips over a table in a scripted conversation, that's amazing. Because I'm sure, like, I don't know. That's she changed the game.
It shows range, right? That's some range right there.
Hey, do you guys watch reality TV competitions?
Like what one?
Survivor and The Amazing Race.
Yes. Yes,
No.
I watched Survivor, but Australia, not America.
Yes.
Have you watched Australia Survivor?
I just
They
caught
get
up
real.
on Canadian Big Brother. They get real.
Oh, I started Canadian Big Brother and I didn't finish it. Does it get better? I started on season 1 though. Should I skip
Do
ahead?
you need my Paramount login? Don't skip ahead. All things connect. The Canadians are look. They're
Big
cold
Brother.
up there, but they are not playing on Big Brother. They're playing
I love Big Brother. I love Big
I've
Brother.
never watched it. Is that they're all like locked into a
so
auditorium or something?
They're in a house living together and then they have to compete and they vote each other off.
Oh.
Yeah. But there's like all kinds of personalities on there. They definitely are looking for certain personality dimensions and people fit certain molds. They want one of each. And then
do you think these reality producers have people like you, Megan, on staff to cast?
Y'all, I stalked the psychologist for Survivor.
You did?
Because I want to be the psychologist for
Survivor.
Yes, because
wouldn't that be
like
fun?
Survivor, they cannot have people quit. So they actually select for resilience, whereas Andy Cohen's out here selecting for volatility. They select for Machiavellian traits with resilience, with, Andy Cohen wants people who drink a whole bunch every day, preferably. In Survivor, you've got to be able to go out there, eat a tiny little bit of rice, and just like still execute, scheme. You can't just roll over because that's not good television. So they like selecting for different things.
Let's define Machiavellianism because I love this trait. It's one of my favorite traits.
Okay, I use it recklessly. You should define it.
Okay. It denotes cunningness, the ability to be manipulative and drive, to use whatever means necessary to gain power. It's part of the dark triad, which includes narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. It's my favorite triad of all time.
Why is it your favorite?
Because it's all the dark stuff. I love it. It includes that psychopathy. So some psychopaths will have like Machiavellianism, that power hungry, cunningness and smart.
Well, that's
just
what's
so
so
interesting to
sophisticated.
understand.
That's what's so sophisticated about the reality like competitions, because they have to pick people who have like all that stuff, but won't actually murder someone on a desert,
right?
like on an island in Fiji.
Like you said,
because they can't have that
line. Yeah.
Yes. So they're very, very sophisticated. And
okay, Rosie, can you get a job doing this, and then we can have a monthly episode on?
This is me emailing them. I've been like, I deployed before. I'll go to Fiji. I will do this stuff.
I'll find you people. That'd be so fun. I've looked into that for NASA.
Oh yeah.
That would
because they need similar traits actually for NASA. Yeah. You have to be so confident, like up above and beyond confident, and sure of yourself when you make a decision. I've thought about that. And
able to cooperate in groups that are remote.
Yeah. So for someone that, when you're looking for people with those kinds of personality traits, are those personality traits things people are born with, or did their environment make them that way, or is it both?
I mean, most things are 50-50. Like in the end, like it used to be said psychopathy is like 80% heritable, which is like you're just born with it. There's still people that think that, but most traits are 50-50. Like you have some proclivity, and then you have an environment that either nurtures that proclivity or shuts it down, or there's something in the middle. Like everything is dimensional. So an environment plays a role in the expression, but a lot of these traits do have genetic heritability to them. So like you'll look up like how heritable is narcissism or psychopathy or any of these personality traits. It's pretty heritable. But environment plays a big role too. It shapes the expression of the trait.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Going back to reality TV for a minute, I'm interested in specifically, Megan, with your background working in women's prisons. I'm interested in what is going on with Jen Shaw right now.
And Elizabeth Holmes, because they're in the same prison, right?
Yes, Elizabeth Holmes. Oh my gosh, which that hits close to home because we live out here in the Bay Area, and she was just, in Silicon Valley building this business and frolicking around the marina, which is a neighborhood within San Francisco, and being seen everywhere. And what an oddball she is. And now, yes, she's in the same prison as Jen Shaw, the Real Housewife, who committed fraud targeting elderly people.
Yeah. And they're down there in Texas by you, Rosie.
I know. I already looked up. Like, you all have a new visitor today. Oh.
We got some new visitors. Okay, so I discussed.
Ooh, can you go visit them, Rosie?
Oh, I'm trying to put myself on the
hi.
list. They have to put you on the list. So I got.
They do. Yeah. Not just anybody's admitted.
But I would go.
Yeah. Send Rosie an invite. Yeah, so they're at women's prisons, which I think I discussed last time, for me is one of the scarier places to go. I'd rather be in a men's prison any day than a women's prison. Working as a psychologist, that is. I mean, I still think
not
for women
incarcerated.
I'd rather not be incarcerated at all. But if I must go to one or the other, men's prisons are a little bit more predictable for me than women's prisons, and but they're at minimum security prisons. They are federal prisons, so they're serious, but they're not at flight risk. They're not, people aren't worried about them. Like, they're not at risk for any sort of like serious offenses while they're in prison. So they're at minimum risk, which is like, there's not as much security around those sort of prisons as there is like for a maximum or high risk.
Are they in a minimum security prison because they're celebrities or because of their crime? Because Jen Shaw is getting 6.5 years for running a pyramid scheme targeting elderly people, and Elizabeth Holmes is getting 11 years for 4 counts of defrauding investors.
Yeah, I mean, that fraud, we as a society sort of say fraud is not terrible. Like, we're going to put murderers in maximum security. We're not going to put fraudsters for the most part. That being said, I mean, some the Enron guy was like at a higher risk facility, but he was a flight risk. I think they thought that he might fly in with a helicopter or something and pull himself out. There was something about, I can't remember exactly what the risk was, but I think I remember reading that they were concerned about that for him because he's got means. But yeah, these two, they're at minimum because of their relatively, I wouldn't say benign, but like lower tier crimes. So if they are at risk, though, they can be moved to different facilities. Like if there's so much popularity around them or they're at risk from other inmates at their facility, then they can be shifted to other places. But in general, it's like a lesser sentence of a place to go to a minimum risk rather than moderate, medium, like which is like medium, high, or maximum.
What are the chances that they're both at the same one in Texas? Is that odd?
There's only like 4. I mean, because it could be at Camp Cupcake up in the Northeast, wherever that is, where Martha Stewart went. I used to run around college with a button that said "Free Martha Stewart" because it was like
there's not very many. Yeah. Rosie's right. There's not very many. Yeah.
Going back to our previous conversation, I want more Elizabeth Holmes and Jen Shaw's and less Marilyn Monroe's and Anna Nicole Smith's, right? Because Marilyn Monroe and Anna Nicole Smith represent this kind of abuse of women in society, and they represent women having opportunities that used to only be open to men, like white collar crime.
Oh, Rosie, I love that.
I'm like, yeah, y'all do your time, okay?
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, well, I mean, Elizabeth Holmes, I mean, we should get into the personality issues there, right? I mean, there's got to be a lot of disorder.
No, I love a turtleneck.
Oh my God, and her voice. Like, I mean, I don't think that's not her natural voice, right?
Did you watch that documentary, Sarah?
Yeah.
Yes, I watched that documentary. I started the Amanda Siegfried. Yeah, but I didn't finish that. That character, the person that she is and the character is just so disturbing and bizarre, and it didn't get my interest. So I'm really interested in what you all think about Elizabeth Holmes's personality, because she's an oddball.
Yeah, she's super interesting because she was able to sort of step on people. She was able to be manipulative and bold in what she was saying and doing, and that made people sort of follow her. And so some of those traits go along with psychopathy, not diagnosing her as that or anything like that, but some of those traits, when we talk about like traits, that's totally different than a disorder. But those traits are interesting, and they do garner a lot of attention from people and make people follow you. And so I think she had like sort of like a cult following of people that just sort of allowed some of the things that happened, like when things weren't working out with her blood samples and stuff like that, and she was just able to sort of gloss over it and talk her way out of it. Like that was super interesting, and just like spoke to her social potency. She just was like, I think, a good speaker. I think people wanted to believe also in like a female empowered leader in the tech industry, which is so male dominated.
Yes.
And so she had that going for her too. And I think that is correct. Like, I think it's good to empower women in the tech industry, but not at the expense of demonstrating the actual, success that you need to be demonstrating.
And very specifically, like the medical tech industry, which I think that a lot of people that put their faith in her and put their money behind her, they wanted her to succeed. They wanted to see this young
people would want
female.
That to be true.
Yes.
So I still want it to be true.
Yeah. Almost be blinded by the fact that, but ultimately she put so many people at risk because she was giving them the wrong health information. And like how, like there's got to be some issues there, some mental issues that you're okay putting that many people at risk, and sick people that were looking for health information.
Yeah. I think, she was definitely able to put aside other people's needs for her own. Which would definitely be something you would say falls into the personality category of somebody who just is able to step on people and like have like very little guilt about that. One trait dimension that's very interesting to me that exists in men and women is callous and unemotional traits. And it's sort of this ability to, not even ability, it's just inherent for some people. They don't feel as strongly as other people feel. That's all there is to it. You can use that and be successful in the corporate world. You can use that, to the disadvantage of other people. It's just sort of the way that you yield that, or the way you wield it in your industry, that makes it either pathological potentially, or like harmful to other people, or makes you super successful. Like one thing Rosie and I loved doing when I worked with her in the business psych stuff was like just looking at personality traits and what makes up a successful CEO. It's not a far cry different from some of the traits you would see in psychopathy. It's just that the way that they use them is different. Those traits end up being used differently. And maybe they're bold, but they feel bad for other people, or they're not fulfilling the full phenotype or expression of psychopathy. They just have a few traits that makes them successul. So it's like a fine line,
So they might run a super successful business, or they might kill someone.
Yeah. Well, and I would like to bring you all some greetings from the real America, aka Texas. But like as somebody, this is the first time I've lived west of the Mississippi, and this idea that people so part of it, again, everybody to me is like a canary in some, maybe it's because I'm struggling to try to take some bigger message out of everything, but this, this sort of idea, like it would be great if that were true. A lot of startups start that way, right? And also Test Wolf launches next week. But whenever I look at Elizabeth Holmes, I'm like constantly thinking, am I speaking beyond my data, and why do I wear black every day? Why are you doing that? Why is your voice so low? It makes you wonder if part of it is this sort of callous, unemotional kind of traits and willingness to speak beyond your data just met up with the zeitgeist, and it was just a brush fire, right? And white collar crime is interesting because it starts with people who think they're going to do something once, right? A lot of it starts with people who think they're going to do something this one time. I'm going to take this petty cash. Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead. I'm going to put it back, and then it just becomes this thing. And so, part of me is like, did she exploit the reality of venture capital, which is that, a lot of folks are speaking on beyond the data. They're guessing when they say what could work out, and they only plan on a fraction of things working out anyway. That's the business model.
They're playing with monopoly money. So the right.
Ooh, honey. I think, what is it called? Moral something something. There's some like economics term for taking risks with other people's, or like doing things with other people's risk and being misleading. And
it's true. So she was walking a fine line. Although let me tell you one thing about her that is just like unfathomable as a mother is that she got pregnant while she was going into trial. Like she, I know, was trying to evoke sympathy or empathy from others, but to do that to your unborn child, and now she has 2 babies that aren't going to see her for 11 years, I suppose. Or would the dad bring them there? Is that how that works?
Yeah. Yeah, they could come for visitation. At the even the maximum security places, you could have visitation like once a week. So they may get more visitation because it's minimum, but he'd have to be like close to Texas, and I believe he's still out here. So he could definitely bring the babies in for visitation to see her. She probably gets more like rec time and more free time and things like that than other people would if they're in like a higher risk facility. Things are a little bit different for her.
If she's delusional about how long she could keep up the con, why wouldn't she also be delusional about whether or not she's going to jail?
That's true.
Right? This idea that there's some diabolical motive to her being pregnant. I mean, who knows what's going on in their relationship? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what's hard about celebrities. That's what's so hard, is that we look at all of them from the lens of our own experience, and we think, I wouldn't have flipped that table. I would have done this. I would have done that. And I think sort of the recreation of it all is sort of more the point when it comes to reality TV. And for these folks, it's just more the point. It's like holding back, like just understanding that that's icky.
Well, and maybe he's a little odd too, right? Because it's like he started dating her when he was already very wealthy, but she was worth billions of dollars at one point. Like her net worth was billions. So he was drawn to that. So maybe he was looking away. Or I know, Megan, you've said that sometimes people with these personality disorders are drawn to other people with disorders as well, right?
Yeah, those genes love each other. They tend to marry each other, those genes.
Let's be crazy together.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely like, not speaking to them specifically, but there's research speaking to like antisocial men like to marry like women with borderline symptoms. And there's like this idea that potentially it's like the same sort of genetic underlying trait, or potentially like the same genes that are being expressed differently for men and women due to societal norms. So it's more acceptable for men in general to be antisocial than it is for women. Women have to be more socially aggressive. We talked about that on our last episode, to get across what they want, because it's less socially acceptable that we would go hit somebody for that. Like we're gonna use our social skills more to get what we want rather than just physical aggression. So, there's some like research out there showing that, but these things do tend to sort of run together. So there's always that in the back of your head too. But back to what Rosie said, I think she actually did push off prison once. So to the degree she believes she could evade prison, she sort of had some like, positive feedback that she could also. So it could be that just sort of, reinforced the idea I can just get out of this. So,
Bernie Madoff didn't keep going because he thought the feds were just at his heels all the time, right? There has to be this sort of belief that there's always something that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting. We just want to put a disclaimer out that we're talking about all of this as pure speculative. Yeah. We are just people watching reality TV, and we have no insight into these people. And
reading the New York Post.
That's right. We don't know these people personally. We've never assessed them, and we don't have any insider knowledge about any of this stuff.
Nope.
we would absolutely see somebody in person and assess them pretty rigorously before we would ever diagnose anybody with any sort of disorder, or even talk about trait level differences. So keep that in mind when thinking about this episode. But thank you for
appeasing me and talking about celebrities because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Time.
Yeah. Rosie, you're awesome. So fun.
Yes, Rosie, thanks for joining.
No, this is super fun. It's really great to kind of hang out and we're all thinking about so much all the time. Like our brains are just cycling through information, and to slow down and say, hey, what have you been thinking about this week is so fun.
Yeah. I love it. For sure. Well, thank you for joining us for this special. Please rate, like, and subscribe, and catch us on Instagram at Platinum Perspective Podcast, and check out Rosie at Test Wolf. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.